Welcome back to the patio for another episode of the Patio Pondering Podcast, where we're trying to make clear thinking for complex agriculture. And as we've discovered over the last 76 episodes, agriculture is full of conversations about production, markets, policy, but sometimes the most important parts of the systems are the ones that people never see. And today's guest, Brian McFarland, who hails from Fort Collins, Colorado, should give us a little bit of an insight into that. And Brian's worked in the packing industry. We were at grad school together at Kansas State. He has a cattle producer in Michigan. So welcome to the patio, Brian.
Yeah, good to be here. Good to see you again.
Yes.
Good to talk to you again. It's been a while.
We passed in the night on LinkedIn.
That's right. We do.
Well, Brian, to jump right in it, in your many years of experience both in the packing industry and as a cattle producer in Michigan, you've seen a lot of the industry from both sides of the fence. And when you look at the beef business today, we're in unprecedented waters. I hate that term, but it's the truth. But the tight cattle supply, massive demand, and growing scrutiny around food safety. With your experiences, what concerns you most about where the beef industry is heading?
Everything you mentioned is spot on. And there's a lot of things that have changed here just recently that have changed some of those factors. But, you go back, things really start getting out of whack during COVID. The industry, a lot of industries started, really kind of got tipped upside down there for a while. Changed things significantly, throw in a couple really significant drought periods, even before that. And the cow herd was beginning to dwindle and shrink, and it's continued to do that. Supply and demand take over, within that, modern economics being as they are. But then in more recent times, I even throw the GLP discussion in there. I think they say 12 to 15% of Americans are on GLP of some form now. Expected to continue to grow. So protein, you throw, JFK Jr. and the whole, nutritional pyramid in there and putting, beef and meat products and protein back up at the top of the pyramid. There's just a whole host of things that are helping drive the demand side of it. Demand has obviously continued to stay strong and actually become stronger, I think, over time. But, and compounded with a very small and yet shrinking cow herd creates for a huge discrepancy in what's causing, in those margins, even at the packing house being negative, but the prices at retail, being extremely high, record highs. And I think that it even goes beyond that. And you see some discussion around that out on even social media, but, the lifestyle of raising cattle, on the live side, I grew up, I wanted to be a ranch manager and manage 500 mama cows out in the hills of Montana and guide hunters during the fall after we're done with crops or something. And obviously I ended up not doing any of that. I end up in a packing house. But, it's a lifestyle that I think fewer and fewer people really want to do. I mean, you look at the generational ranches out there that, don't have the next generation that want to run them. You can bring in that corporate ranching discussion and, corporate ownership of some of these large ranches, but, there's fewer and fewer cows. There's fewer and fewer ranches, that have cows. I don't know that I see a real quick turnaround in that cow herd coming at us. And just the life cycle of cattle, you've got a minimum of 2 years. Once heifer retention starts to happen, you got at least 2 years going. I really don't see any signals that any significant heifer retention has started. So my best guess is you got at least another 2 to 3 years of, really challenging beef market for the packers. And I really don't know what's going to happen on the live side of, is the cow herd really going to grow back or not? And I think just how many people really want to raise cows is an important question in the middle of all that, because if you don't have more people want to raise cows, the cow herd's, it's going to be dependent on those that currently raise them to raise more. Yeah, so I don't know. There's an unknown variable in there that's, I think, is a big one that, in 5 years we might know part of that answer. I don't know. Anybody can predict it. I'm sure a lot of people have opinions on it. But so you got, basic supply and demand, but cow herd versus the demand of beef on the backside. You got packers fighting over all the cattle from the feedlots. Retailers fighting for the number of boxes that are available because the supply is limited because of the cow herd size, and demand's gone up. So it's a real tough market depending on what area you're in. On the live side, it's a real, plentiful market financially. And they're doing really well, historically really well, and probably now doing making what they should have been making for some time.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's a tough lifestyle raising cows for not much money. And expenses on the live side have gone way up. It's feed costs and everything else.
You brought up my next question, and I've talked about it with several different guests, and I've got some thought. Coming from the pig industry and the crop side and the Eastern Corn Belt, cattle is different out here. We talk about animals per acre, not acres per animal. We talk about how pasturing cattle will hurt the corn soybean production. So it's completely different out here. But there's one thing that is happening right now, and I think it illustrates what you were talking about, the challenges to opening the beef herd. And that is corn prices suck, and we have people saying, hey, you need to do something different. And the first thing they say is get cows. Well, my first response is, what cows? Because there's not heifers out there to go buy. A 2-in-1 at Dunlap is probably trading $3,500 to $4,000. I mean, that's a lot of money. The other thing that I think we completely ignore, and I thought about this when I was working calves with my son-in-law in southeast Nebraska. They put 100 calves through the chute, green tag them. The facilities were old. They were shit.
Yeah.
And how many of those crappy facilities that work and fences have been taken out the last 10 to 20 years because raising crops is easy and I don't want to screw around with cattle? That's probably the biggest limiter to expanding the cow herd, because you don't have the guys in say, let's put 10 cows in or 20 cows in.
Well, and I think a big factor in there that I didn't mention but specific to your question is look at land prices now. I know, we lived in northeast Nebraska for quite a while, and, you get bottom ground because you got that Missouri Valley that kind of runs through there along the river. So you got the bottom ground, which is really high dollar, property. And then you got the hill ground, which makes, some farm ground, but it's not the high dollar farm ground. And it makes really good, brood cow, pasture ground. But even at that, the bottom ground selling, minimum 10, if not 15 to 18, thousand an acre. You can't afford to run cows on that kind of ground, but I don't know you can afford to do corn at corn prices on that ground either. So you have what I call, the old farm money, the old big money that's buying up because they have the equity of all the other properties. So the big farms are getting bigger, because they're the ones that can financially afford to acquire and bring in the extra acres. But this goes back to how many people are going to live that lifestyle. You can't afford to get into it and buy ground, buy cows, and make the math work. At least my math doesn't get there. So I don't know how you get into it from that aspect. But on the same, piece, I don't know how you buy ground at what the cash price for, crop ground is and put cows on it and make it work, compounded with, heifer calves that are going to cost you $3,000 and up just to start. That math's tough math. And if you get into it and say the cow herd does start growing and the finances change around on it, now you got a cow herd that's generating even less money if the live side goes down in value. So then now you even got more risk of even getting into it with those kind of prices. But that's just the way my mind works anyways. I don't, there's going to be other people in different parts of the country that probably view that, somewhat differently. But I think, the land value piece is a critical piece in there. And I don't even know how some of the guys are making crops work on it for what they've paid.
When we were in grad school, One of the things that we heard was a challenge to the beef industry was there were so many people with small amounts of cows that we didn't have the consistency at that time poultry industry had. And the beef industry was worrying about how things would fit in a box because the genetics were different. Maybe we finally come to that point where there is some control because we've got some scale in some of these operations.
I still don't think it's probably there, but I think genetics over time have gotten better. The science has gotten better. The industry's gotten better. But when we were in school, if I remember right, the average cow herd they reported was like 14 or 15 cows. Mm-hmm. I think now if you look it up, it's more like 40 or 50 cows. And I don't know what that exact number is, but when you think of how, but still in the big scheme of things, those are still pretty small herds, but 50 cows is a lot bigger herd than 15 cows. And that tells me all these little hobby farmers and all these people that have a few cows have gotten rid of them. That's the way I think about it anyway. So then I don't know that the herds have gotten bigger, but a lot of the little ones have gone away. So then the math makes your average herd size bigger if you get rid of all the small groups out of there, if that makes sense. That's what I think's probably happening. I don't know.
Well, we've got them all black. We have done
that. We have done that. Thank you, CAB.
You bring up another point that we ignore when we talk about beef herd size. And I would contend that the average beef herd size has increased dramatically because we've started crossbreeding spotted cows to make half-bred Holsteins.
The beef on dairy.
You throw that in, that's changed the beef market dramatically.
Well, and thank God we have, I won't say totally figured it out, but they've gotten a lot better on that science. The beef on dairy thing's a really huge factor in the beef industry, especially in just supplying beef in, all the way through, helping the packers. We've shut off the Mexico border, because of the world screwworm. So that's eliminated, a couple million head of cattle or whatever a year, from coming through feedlots. The dairy herd's actually gotten bigger. In fact, I've thrown some questions out on this because I think that whole section intrigues me. But, for a long time, they're working on sex semen. So the dairy industry, would get 100% heifer calves, get rid of, all the male calves. And now it's turned into where and I don't know enough people in that industry that it'd be an interesting question to ask somebody that's in the middle of it. But do they use sex semen to precisely now generate X percentage of male calves, female calves, and generate the heifer calves replacements out of very specific, mama cows? And maybe that's through embryo transfer and cloning and a bunch of these other, science techniques. But, they don't need 100% heifer calves, so there's a balance in there, but with the genetics of the beef on dairy, they make really good carcasses, and they make good quality beef. They grade well, from a tenderness and sensory perspective. They eat very well. They're a very good animal, and thank God the beef industry has them now, because it'd really be tough if we didn't. And consumers would suffer that impact as beef prices would be a lot higher at retail.
Well, there's one segment of the industry that's probably squawking that they don't like it, and that's Omaha steaks.
Well, I think I don't know the details of the finances behind them, but I see I forget their CEO's name, but he posts some stuff out online, and then they've kind of changed their business model. I think they're actually doing better with, since COVID, people bought a lot of grills. There's a lot more home cooking, grilling. It's kind of become a new way of doing things, and it stuck, I think, after COVID. And as I understand some of his posts anyways, there's a lot more when you got all these box shipments now, Butcher Box and all these different companies out there that are doing these home deliveries that they've turned into multi-million-dollar businesses because a lot of people are ordering products at home now. And Omaha Steaks is right in the middle of it. I think their business is doing quite well for them, amongst a bunch of others. And, some of them even, gone out and become publicly traded now. They're huge businesses. And so I think, the consumers changing how they buy products, what they do with them. You can even go down the rabbit hole of TikTok videos and cooking videos and all these other things. I know in our house, I know Becky's always coming up with some new recipe, and we try this and that, and she likes, experimenting, and, a lot of it's really good. And I think that's, changing some habits, I think, in the household, and all of it starts tying together. That's the demand thing. All these things they're a little piece of that big puzzle. And it's all helping, at least on the demand side. But boy, the supply side, I don't know what the answer is there yet.
I see it in my neighborhood because I live in an Amish community and they feed a lot of calves. You'd be hard pressed to drive around and see a full lot of spotted cows. They're black and there might be a spotted cow or two in that group. So it's changing. But you brought something up. You and I know about it because we took advanced meat science, and Dr. Dykman and Dr. Hunt, they all beat home thermometers. So we have started giving out meat thermometers for graduation presents. And it used to be a big deal, but I bought a whole bunch of them from the TikTok shop for $5 a piece. I wonder if the combination of food safety and understanding how to cook beef in particular has stemmed from COVID is also helping beef demand, because we got thermometers that we can stick in there and going, hey, I'm going to take it off at 140.
Oh, for sure. I think this whole, pellet grills and, the big green egg and all these different models. I mean, there's, I don't know how many different types of grills you can get now. Then you got infrared grills, pellet grills, charcoal grills. There's anything you want, you can buy it now. And, some of them are really cool. And they, now they're, it's a full weekend, full day event now to cook some of these products on some of these items. I like fast and to the plate.
There you go.
So I'm all about quick, but yeah, I think it's helped I think it slowly is helping food safety. That's, for years, I don't think anybody ever even owned a thermometer, let alone used them in, ground beef patties or whatever. I'm going to go on a tangent because I have a food safety background, but it still blows my mind. You go into restaurants and they'll still ask you, how would you want your hamburger cooked? And, yeah, I always tell them with my E. coli dead, and they look at me confused. so then they say, well, what temperature you want it? And you give them a number, and then they look at you even more confused. But anyways, no, I think all that starts tying together, though. I think it slowly is helping food safety. People are more aware of it, but it's also helping people cook things so they're more satisfied with the outcome of what they've put together and what they've cooked. Because it's so easy to overcook, any kind of meat on a grill. You get talking, whatever, you forget about it, you get watching the game, blah, blah, blah. Before you know it, now you got a well done steak, and the steak sucks, and nobody wants to blame you for cooking it wrong. It's, it had to be the steak.
It wasn't the 5 bourbons, the 3 Budweisers, and the football game.
That's right. But it's funny you mentioned that. So I got a whole box of meat thermometers here, and I use them for stocking stuffers and Christmas gifts and birthday gifts and stuff too. But yeah, I do the same thing, and people use them. I think, if you help them kind of know how to use them, believe it or not, it's maybe as stupid and simple as that sounds, but, just people, a lot of people just don't know how. So I try to, I figure, every person I can train and help educate on that piece is, one more that the industry has trained. But, I think all that has helped definitely, drive the demand side of it, though, for sure.
I would put us in the realm of, we know how to cook meat, and even we get caught. We had some pork chops in the pan the other day, and I got the thermometer out, and one was, I don't know, it was 3/4 or 7/8 of an inch instead of 1 1/8 inches. Stuck my thermometer in there, like, well, that one's done. And I wasn't expecting it because the other ones are at 120, and this one was like 145. Like, I get that off. If we make mistakes, or we get challenged, and we know how to do it, then how can we expect every homemaker or every grill master to get it right without the thermometer?
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the big challenges, and I'm glad you brought up the pork, because I love pork cooked basically medium rare, 145. Oh, man. I'll bring it up and tell people, get your pork chop medium rare, even in restaurants and stuff, because they don't even generally, a lot of times they won't even ask you how you want your pork chop done, how you want your steak done, but they won't ask you how you want your pork chop done. And you ask them medium rare, and even sometimes you get confused like there at a restaurant.
Yeah.
But I still have people asking, like, you can cook pork, medium rare? And, well, yeah. Now, wild pig, that's a different discussion. I don't necessarily agree on cooking wild pig to 145. But if it's domestically raised, yeah, and it eats real well. But one of the challenges the beef industry has, especially in, ribeyes and strips, because of the size of the cattle and the size of the eyes. Now, if you get a 10 or 12 ounce steak, they're so, they're getting so thin that it's hard to get a thermometer in the center of it, truly center. And I mean, there's a fine line between rare, medium rare, and well done on those things when you got them on a hot grill.
When we were in grad school on the pig and the beef side, I mean, we were going from a 5-inch loin to a 7 or 8 inch. And then in the beef, we were going from that 8, 9 to 10, 12, getting those, some of the big, massive loin eyes.
Yeah. Now we got 16, 18 inches.
Wow. With your experience in the packing plant at Tyson, IBP, and at JBS, what has been the change from a food safety standpoint over your career inside the packing plant to make it better for the consumer?
There's been a lot, and you're right, it's kind of behind the scenes because nobody talks about it per se out in public unless you're in, I'll say, food safety circles. But one, the implementation of HACCP, believe it or not, way back when, that was a, big thing. You got to go back to Jack in the Box and some of these early issues in the industry. So yeah, we went from, looking for our first, E. coli sample and we found it pretty quick. And not knowing really what and how to address this thing and trying to manage systems I remember early on in those early days of the testing methodologies from a laboratory perspective weren't very good. So you had a lot of false positives, and of course you can't have a false negative because obviously that's a train wreck. But we would hit, those times we'd hit 5-10% positive rates, and we're like, my gosh, we're going to go bankrupt just on positive trim. And so sanitary dress, getting the hide off, removed cleanly. There's all kinds of technologies and research that have gone into, feeding animals, things to help control E. coli, to using phage to treat hides on the live animal coming in. And there's a whole host of interventions that have been implemented across the slaughter floors. One of the best ones, I think, is one of the, these thermal hot water systems. So, we had to get the hide off an animal, off a carcass at that point. You got the hide on side, and then they transition in the newer facilities. It's literally a wall with a hot water thermal cabinet. The carcass passes through basically a hot water bath, if you want to call it that. And then transitions into the hide off side, and airflow and air management and everything is all tied together with these systems to keep, especially, dust and dirt from blowing around off these hides as they're removed from the carcass, and keeping that carcass clean. And then there's, the focus, the light intensity, the quality of light, rotation of knives. I mean, the list goes on and on and on to basically keep that carcass clean all the way through the process. And then you get to the end, you generally hit either a hot water cabinet or some type of intervention at the end of the process before then they go into what we call the hot box, or where we start chilling them. And most companies have added an intervention now into their spray chill, which the spray chill is used to help chill the carcass, I'll say more precisely, but also adding an intervention through there gives you kind of a continual just clicking away at any type of microbial growth that may be, occurring on the surface of that carcass. And then obviously after they get chilled, they get blended through the sales cooler. Typically have another intervention as they come out of the sales cooler, go to your fabrication floor. They get broke up into primals and trim, And then at the end of those lines, then again, another intervention that gets applied to the trim conveyors as they get comboed or boxed or whatever. And then the primals also get another intervention before they get bagged. So there's this series, call it obviously a multiple hurdle approach. And science has learned a lot on the types of interventions and how do you apply them and the temperatures you need to run and the engineering of actually making the equipment to apply hot water or steam or whatever. Steam's not typically used anymore. It's generally hot water, but how you even apply the interventions. There's been a lot of science and learnings that have occurred over the years, and we've taken from those early days of, maybe running 5% more positive rates or whatever, those high numbers, to, I think the industry now probably runs in that 0.35, 0.4, maybe 0.5% at the high end as a total industry positive rate for 0157 on trim. So that, and you'll hear other people say it, but that's been a success story of the beef industry for sure. Driving that E. coli rate down has, one, prevented a lot of people from getting sick, but, saved a lot of lives. People die from this stuff, and I'm pretty passionate about that. And people on LinkedIn that follow me on LinkedIn will see me get pretty passionate in the words and the verbiage I use when I talk about food safety, because, I think one of the comments I gave to somebody is, you prevent somebody, and a lot of times it's either young or old people because of immunities and such, but you prevent people from suffering a painful and agonizing death when you prevent E. coli from getting to them. And to me, I don't even call it a responsibility. It's an absolute mandate in, ownership of anybody that's going to produce. And I've even expanded it beyond just beef, but any manufacturer of a consumable item, it's your number one responsibility, period. And if you don't have that mindset, you're going to kill somebody some way. And I don't know how else to make it any more serious than that, but that's my belief, and I'm sticking with it.
Well, it seems like we've kind of had a straight line trajectory, slight growth from the publication of Animal Farm and Typhoid Mary, and we did simple things like washing hands and watching temperature, but it seemed like we learned more. But since we were in grad school in the early 90s to now, it seems like our understanding of food safety, understanding of how we can analyze and the interventions has been kind of exponential in what we've done.
For sure. Again, a lot of things start tying together. It's never just one thing that does any of this, but you look at, even processor speeds. I mean, like in computers, that type of processor speeds, the computer capability, vision systems, the technology and capabilities of how you can electronically manage systems, and, even like something managing foreign objects in these trim streams in plants. Now you got vision and x-ray systems and detection systems that literally blow your mind. We're just doing the tour through, Beck Seed Company yesterday, and, they have high speed vision systems that detect, defective kernels and blow them out of their, these high speed streams, and same things used in, fruit and vegetable industries, and, the computer capabilities now and the programming capabilities, and might as well throw in all these new AI capabilities. It's changing the industry dramatically, and I think in a good way. It's making food streams safer. It's improving consistency and quality of product. It's allowing you to do a lot of different things, and ultimately it's helping the consumer. It's probably allowing them to maybe have a broader selection of type of products as well. But it is adding some cost into the system as well. And ultimately when you add costs, the consumer's going to pay for that.
Yeah. Like $10 a pound chuck roast.
Yeah. It's not cheap, but I do I have seen some people though, and I like these comparisons. weigh up a candy bar, a little bag of chips, or some of these other food items that people just randomly buy and don't think about the cost because they're only, a buck or two or whatever. Calculate those on a per pound basis and see how much they cost. You do some of those comparisons and beef's pretty damn cheap.
Yeah. Well, one thing that we don't shy away from much here on the patio is some controversy. I have seen recently, and it's precipitated by somebody that's in your part of the world, more talk about raw milk. And somebody posted, like, I know my raw milk is clean because they wipe the shit off the udder, and if there's any turds that fall into the bucket, they strain it out.
Well, I'm glad they got they got the chunks out. So the last time I asked somebody that I would probably consider an expert in this field is you're not able to see an E. coli or Salmonella or Listeria cell unless you got very good eyesight. And just because the brown chunky material's out doesn't mean that the E. coli is out. So, unless you got a very small micron type of filter that you're filtering it through. So yeah, I'm a little mixed on the raw milk thing. Personally, I don't like, for me and my family, it's not going to happen. But that's kind of what makes America great. If the next guy down the road wants to drink raw milk, I'm going to tell them why they should or shouldn't and give them the pros and cons of it. But at the end of the day, have at it. If that's the risk you want to take for you and your family, I'm not going to agree with it. But because we live in America and that kind of is your right, I'm going to say go ahead. But you got a lot of risk and you're jeopardizing the health of you and your family.
I think you nailed it. You and I as scientists understand the risk, and if you're willing to take that risk, knock yourself out. But you and I are going to stand here and talk about the interventions that are in place that we've learned, in whether it's in the milk pasteurization or it's in a beef plant or a pork plant or even in a vegetable processing plant. We know a lot more now in 2026 than we did in 1995, and we know more than we did in 2025.
Yeah, for sure. And, and that's where we can, as people on a podcast like this, we can say some things like that. And I think of, honestly, the poor regulators that are trying to manage this because honestly, they're science-based. They understand, they have the same knowledge that we're talking about, but they can't say what we just said. They have to take the position. It's a risk. You cannot do it. And, and they get put into a bad position because how do you manage people that, and I don't want to say it in a derogatory way, but that aren't educated on the subject. They've been doing it. People around have been doing it. So they're going to do it. They don't know what they don't know, kind of deal. And so it's not really their fault per se, but how do we help educate them of those risks? I look at the regulators and man, they got a tough job on some of these kind of topics that they're kind of in a lose-lose situation, but they get stuck having to make a particular decision that a lot of people don't like. But it's because they kind of have to protect people that don't understand the risks.
Yeah. Last year, I put a shotgun, a cast net out for jobs, and there was a job for Indiana Board of Animal Health, which is the arm that manages the inspectors in the state inspected plants, not USDA. So you got USDA, state inspected, and then custom. And so this was for the one between the two. And it was going to cover Northeast Indiana, so 10, 12 counties. And that would probably be 30 different custom packing plants. The job description said you're going to get paid $42,000 a year. $42,000 a year for something so important as inspecting meat.
So you hit on another subject. So USDA is in this is at all levels. They are struggling to find people for these jobs, and a lot of it is salary related. I thought, I thought I had a really good solution, and I'm visiting with at the time, the guy that was running USDA, and I'm like, why don't you just change the job class of this position then? If you need more veterinarians in these plants, and they're trying to get modernization where you start literally modifying how the inspection is done, and the pre-sorting, and kind of who you have do what tasks in the plants, which I think is actually a great program. But they're kind of getting forced to do it a little bit because they can't hire veterinarians, and they can't hire enough staff because they don't pay enough. And I'm like, yeah, just change the job class and you can start paying them more. And he said, sounds simple. He goes, but when you look at the job class of a veterinarian in a beef packing plant, and you want to change that job class, but that job class is tied to all these different jobs across the entire government of the United States. You change that one job class, it changes all of them. And I'm like, wow. so that's a wrench thrown into that discussion I wasn't expecting. So yeah, they're in a dilemma now. I think at one point I know there were several thousand vets short.
Think about it. You're coming straight out of vet school, and you have the option to go work for Banfield doing vaccinations and maybe a spay neuter and make $100,000 a year, or go work for the packing plant, USDA, for $70,000. I think I'm going to go to Banfield where I don't have to worry about getting shit in my shoes. Well,
yeah, with a $150,000 student loan debt.
Yeah.
Or 200,000 or whatever it is now. I don't know what it costs to go to vet school for 8 years, but to go to school for 8 years to do that is, people that want to be a big animal vet or go into veterinarian medicine because they have a personal passion are not going to want to go stand on a gut table in a packing plant. You could go down the rabbit hole of how you get into vet school and what, who they take into vet school.
Oh, let's not get that controversial. Food safety and raw milk is where we're going to draw the line.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to make my one little irritant, and thank gosh, a guy when I went to Michigan State, I walked over to the vet school, and because so a little vet story. Anyways, so the amazing Dr. Pole on TV that you've probably watched at some point, that was my vet growing up. He was my vet. Yeah. Great guy. I love the guy. In fact, I liked him enough and liked being around him, liked how he did stuff. I thought, man, I'd like to be a vet like Dr. Pole. And, so I went and talked to the vet school when I got out of Michigan State, and the guy says, well, this is kind of how it is. He goes, do you have a 4.5 grade point? I said, no, we only have a 4.0 scale. He goes, exactly. And I'm like, okay. And because of just how the demographics they were selecting, and, I wasn't, but his point was I wasn't going to make it. and so it was a 5-minute discussion, and, I guess thank God he was honest with me and, kind of shoot me straight there on, what he was thinking. And I went back over to my animal science department. That's where I continued.
My last 3 semesters, I think, as a TA, I TA'd for Dr. Scott Shockey, and for Animal Science 102, 101, whatever it was, your first one. And that class always started in the meat science auditorium. So you had 50 students in there, and they're all green. They're still wearing their high school Letterman jacket, and they're just all excited. And so Scott would say, hey, who wants to be a vet? Or who's pre-vet? And they'd raise their hand because, okay, everybody stand up that wants to be a vet. And then you got 50 people in the class, 45 of them stand up like, I'm going to be a vet. And then he looks over at this cute little girl probably and says, everybody but you sit down. And they're like, oh, okay, this is kind of cute. And he looks and he gets a serious face, as serious as Dr. Shockey can be. He goes, she's the only one getting to vet school. And you could see it was quiet, and it went from maybe somebody realized it, but most of them were like, fuck you. But there was no realization that 1 out of 50 in that class was going to get in. Now think about an animal science program like K-State that has 900 students in it. Yep. We need more people in animal science that did to students saying, hey, we got all these other really cool careers that you can be in animal science. Let's start looking at it your freshman year instead of your 8th semester going, oh crap, I got a 2.9. I'm never going to get into vet school. What am I going to do?
Yeah. And I guess I would throw in the other option there is there's a lot of what I'll call farm kids that would like to be vets and honestly would make awesome vets that can't get into vet school because of whatever restraint. Maybe it's GPA, maybe it's some other things, maybe it's financial, whatever. How do you get those kids into vet school and through vet school? Because they would be lifelong, large animal vets or whatever, and they'd be good at it. That whole industry has an issue of how do you figure that out? I know we've diverted off food safety but there's a problem in there that they got to figure out because there's a lot of good potential vets that never get the opportunity.
Well, and it's system wide. It goes from the producer all the way up to the vet schools. And think about it.
For sure.
I had somebody on one of the groups I'm on that was complaining that their vet charged them a $35 or $50 farm call, and he was charging $7 to preg check or $5 or something stupid. And I'm like, man, that's a massive freaking deal. My God,
that's cheap.
Yeah,
that's cheap.
Yeah. Like, oh, okay. So you got the producer like, freaking vet's trying to screw me, and you got the vet school. It's like, oh, you don't fit this demographic. You can't come in. Oh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Let's add a little levity here. What is your favorite rifle to shoot?
So one I own. I'll start with that.
There you go. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually just bought a new Springfield heat seeker rifle. It's a 6.5 Creedmoor. I'm setting it up to do an NRL league, which is a long range league that they shoot in different places. And I put a Burris Eliminator 6 scope on it. So I kind of went all out on this. So those Eliminator scopes are kind of the computerized range finding, everything all in one scope. I haven't even shot it yet. I got the scope on it. I haven't even shot it yet. So I'm really chomping at the bit to actually maybe this weekend get some ammo reloaded for it and get out shooting it. But, yeah, this is one of those just, reach out and touch something.
So the 6.5 Creedmoor, that's, as cartridges go, that's controversial. You either love it or you hate it.
Yeah. That does get pretty passionate. You get into that realm as well. The 6.5, so you go into these NRL leagues, and the 6.5 Creedmoor is an extremely popular round for one, ballistic coefficient, so range, minimal recoil, because you shoot a lot when you do it, so that they don't pound you to death. Now there's a 6.5 PRC that's out that some of that's, some people are kind of moving over to X. There's a little more velocity and stuff. But it's kind of a good middle of the road, rifle. In great caliber. And there's some old rounds that are just didn't have as fancy a names over the years, but a 6.5 type of rifle has been around forever. They've just done so much marketing around it now, and there's so many accessories. And again, you get into the whole technology discussion, like this new Springfield rifle I just got. It was the best factory rifle accuracy guarantee I could find. So it's a 0.75 MOA guarantee from factory.
Oh, geez.
So that rifle is going to shoot way better than I can shoot it.
Yeah. The 6.5 always strikes me because Indiana now has rifle. We've had rifles for years. anybody that carries a slug gun is an old fart that just don't want to buy a rifle. And I always find it funny that people say, that 6.5 won't kill anything. I got to have a 300 Win Mag or a 308. I'm like, you shot a 95-pound doe.
Yeah. So we started shooting 6.5 Creedmoors when they came out. When Hornady first came out with the round, we knew a guy that did a lot of their ballistic development at Hornady. He set Becky up with one of the first Thompson Center rifles that was set up in 6.5 Creedmoor. This is kind of before everybody even knew about him. And because Becky drew a once in a lifetime tag in Nebraska for elk. And she ended up shooting her elk, and she got some ridicule about this, but she shot her elk at 450 yards with that 6.5 Creedmoor. Took him down. It's all about shot placement. Bullet type, shot placement, all that stuff goes together. You can use a big gun, you hit an animal wrong, and they're going to run off. You can use an adequate gun, hit them right, and it's going to be an effective, humane kill.
Well, it just proves that we have a whole bunch of old wives' tales and things around 6.5. Sure. But, the 6.5 for what you're doing, it's got little recoil, a lot of speed, and a lot of range. So that'd be fun for you to shoot in those extra long ranges.
Oh, for sure. You get talking about that now, and I'm in a whole nother mode of emotion and discussion.
Oh, yeah. Well, you remember Matt Lane from grad school.
Oh, yeah.
He came from Montana. And he swore by a 25-06.
Right.
That's a 6.5 Creedmoor like. It's a small caliber with a lot of powder behind it.
Yeah, it's got a bigger case on it, so you got a little more powder in it.
Yeah, but it's still that same smaller cartridge, not a 30 caliber, or that we traditionally think about as a big game rifle.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of things out there. And of course, I'm a bow hunter, so when you go from bow hunting to rifle hunting, it's very different than going from rifle hunting to bow hunting. But when you live bow hunting, your close shot placement is absolutely everything and critical for bow hunting, and let alone trying to get a shot off without them seeing you or smelling you. But because you're so close, so going from that kind of mentality to going to a rifle, the new accuracy of these rifles is phenomenal. Again, that technology's taken over that industry. You can go blindly buy a factory rifle now, and they're really good. It used to be, years ago, well, you need to spend a little money if you want a decent rifle. And now, everything's gone up in price too, but, you can, there's so many good rifles and so much good equipment out there that, it's phenomenal what you can do with them now. You can be I'll say an average shot in a shooting range. You can go buy the technology off the shelf and, shoot 5, 6, 7,000 yards and actually be pretty decent at it.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
It is. Going down a different rabbit hole. So as you talk about bow hunting, our neighbors, the Amish, are in love with crossbows, and that's what they take to the woods. So you're talking 300, 325 feet per second, carbine. And I pull out my bow. I'm still old school because I didn't want to spend the money on a new bow. So I got my old PSE I got set like 75 pounds, and I'm throwing old Easton aluminums, like a 2117. It looks like I'm shooting a freaking dowel
log.
A log. Yeah. And they're all laughing at me like, oh, you're like, back to your shot placement. Like, if I hit their spot, inertia and momentum behind it.
Oh, yeah. 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 Foot pounds is still a discussion point in there. Yep.
And that's why I carry a 45 ACP and not a 9mm. Let's throw some lead out there.
That's right.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, I knew we were going to do this. I knew we were going to talk about science and technology in the beef industry, and then we'd end up talking about fun stuff with guns and bows and hunting.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
This has been a great conversation.
Yeah.
I like to end every one of our conversations with 5 questions. I love getting the answers because the range of people that are guests is really cool, and their experiences play into the questions. So the first question I have is, what is one lesson from ag that you carry with you every day?
One lesson from ag. Boy, there's so many. I'm trying to think what would be one of the good ones. You know, you nothing easy's worth going after. If you come up with an ag background, you're not afraid to work, and working hard pays off. Sometimes it's not immediate, and sometimes it takes a while to really see that. But the work ethic from ag is getting harder and harder to find, and very much appreciated. I love the work ethic of people who come, from ag, for sure.
If you could have coffee with any historical figure in agriculture or food production, who would it be?
Ooh, any historical person in food production. Well, in the beef industry, I actually did with Bob Peterson, so the founder of IBP. So that was an interesting one. And learned a lot of lessons from him as well. For current modern, I wouldn't mind actually. This is not going to be an old name, but JFK Jr. I wouldn't mind visiting with him.
I am envious of Theo Vaughn because he's had RFK Jr. on twice. And their relationship, he's able to ask questions that really make RFK think. And I think that's a good one. Yeah. Because talking to RFK Jr. would encompass everything we talked about today.
Yeah.
Freedom with raw milk, food safety, and it's easy for our industry to lionize RFK Jr. for all the things he's done against our business. Think about all the lawsuits he did in North Carolina against the pork industry, the push against vaccines. But if we really take a step back and listen to some of the things he's got, I think he's got some nuggets. And one of the big nuggets that's going to affect us that you brought up is flipping over that pyramid on the food pyramid.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I can say this, that I don't think it's confidential because it's been said in a public forum, but so the Meat Institute used to be the North American Meat Institute. We used to call them NAMI, but it's called the Meat Institute now. They had a huge forum in Washington, D.C. last year, and it went very well. So they had a group of their executive board went out, met with all the leaders in Washington, D.C. about just general meat industry topics. And JFK Jr. was one of the people that came and visited with them. And they tell this story and they kind of laugh. He said, because his opening line to everybody in the room is like, okay, at one time or another, I've sued every one of you. And, and he goes, what do you want to talk about?
Okay.
Yeah. Wow. And they said the meeting was absolutely phenomenal with the guy. He was very open, shoot him straight, was sincere about what he was talking about. And, really wanting to do kind of the right thing. So it was pretty interesting. And so hopefully, and it sounds like they're going to open that up to more board members. So I'm not on the executive board. I'm on kind of the regular board of directors. So hopefully I'll be able to get to go on that next year and maybe meet with a guy.
Oh, that's cool. So, what is one quirky or underappreciated thing about agriculture that more people should understand?
My first thought is kind of this whole where your food comes from deal. The amount of time and effort, work, and cost that goes into putting the center of the plate protein in front of a consumer. It's not like a potato chip or a candy bar manufactured that you just open up and eat that came off a production line. You don't just make it. There's a lot of care, passion, time, work, cost, to get a cow, a heifer calf born, raised, bred, calved, that calf all the way through the system, through the feedlot in industry, and call it same for, chicken and pork. It's just more drawn out and longer for cattle, but, what it takes to really put a good steak or beef item in front of a consumer.
It's not going up to the replicator on the USS Enterprise in the Nebula system and saying, replicator, make a burger.
No, for sure.
What is your favorite ag-related tool, product, or innovation?
Ooh, because I love the techie stuff. I like the science techie kind of things. So I don't know if it's a favorite because I don't know about it, but I just read about it. So I think this one's really cool. In fact, I talked about it at VEX when I was there with them. So University of Nebraska just posted, they have now their little computer chips, almost like a little strip that they adhere to the leaves on corn, and it monitors the internal like moisture and nutrient level of the leaf, and then sends signals of how do you water and what nutrients need to be applied to that plant in that field, with the thought of you can adjust nutrients and water levels up and down to, one, save money to not waste nutrients and water in areas that you don't need it. But that kind of stuff is so cool. That I'm not a corn guy, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I think if you get back to what you talked about on the life cycle of livestock, think about the RFID tags we have in dairy barns that can tell you, hey, she hasn't been to the bunk in 6 hours. You better check her. Or she hasn't milked today. Go check her. Those are technologies that we use that make us do a better job.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, there's so many cool ones out there that, that's pretty unbelievable. You get down the whole genomics thing of what you can do in laboratories and stuff now. So there's that's a long list of stuff. That one's a recent one though. I thought was really cool.
Play into the answer you had before. There's a lot of technology that we use in agriculture, getting food on the plate, that I don't think people really understand, because we don't even understand everything.
Yeah, for sure.
So in the last question, what is one small change that can make a big impact in ag's future?
A big change. And ag is such a broad category too. The economics and financing around all of ag. I hate the huge market swings that like all of ag goes through. How do you stabilize those to make agriculture a consistent financial career potential for young people coming up? And that one's way above my pay grade, but how do you make ag careers a good, sound, viable option for the next generation? Well, I think that's a big problem. It goes back to the cow herd size and that discussion as well. But because I'm a huge ag supporter. I love ag. I like the people that are in ag, and I don't want to see it go away. And I don't know how to stabilize that long term. But if somebody could figure that out, that would be a great help.
Well, Brian, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule there in Colorado and spending some time with me. Our conversation covered beef, food safety, technology, and we even got into a little bit of fun about talking about rifles and bow hunting.
Yeah.
So if people want to connect with you or learn more about you, where's the best place to do that?
Probably on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest. Yeah, that's probably the easiest for at least diverse people. And then I'd be upset with myself if I didn't mention it, but we even have a Shiver Shield LinkedIn page out there. So for our cold weather clothing company. So you never have to be cold again either. So I got to throw that plug in too.
Well, I purposely didn't bring it up because I know it would have extended our conversation beyond what we could do. So I will have both those links in the show description. So
okay,
great. Well, to my listeners and followers, here's another conversation that led places we didn't expect and opened us up to different things in ag that some of us don't know about.
Thanks for having me.